We've put out our top 100 free agent list with no involvement whatsoever from me. So if you don't like it, that's your prerogative. Don't blame me. I specifically stayed away from it, so leave me alone. Anyway, it looks like a decent list. Now, obviously, we've added the people who have been franchise tagged. We always do that, more for illustrative purposes than anything else. Where do they fit in relation to the other guys? The number one guy when you take away Davante Adams is Jaycee Jackson. And Peter, how surprised were you? Let's start there. I'm going kind of off our outline, but how surprised were you that the Patriots, number one, didn't franchise tag him, and number two, didn't get him signed before he's on the cusp of being able to officially accept offers from other teams?
I was slightly surprised, but you've seen in the last few years, I mean, shoot, Mike, you can go back to Lawyer Malloy in 2003 with probably the most famous one. Guys, even beloved guys on his own team, Bill Belichick doesn't often pay huge money to his own players. You know, and you see it happening more recently, too, with Joe Thuney, being allowed to go to Kansas City. And I think he feels like, well, Jaycee Jackson came as a totally, below the radar corner into our camp 4 years ago. And we're going to find another one. And I think that's how Bill Belichick has always, you look at Richard Seymour. He left, now he's entering the Hall of Fame. And so to me, when you look at players in the New England system, they're far more likely, as in the case of Matthew Judon, or in the case of Jonnu Smith, they're more likely to pay when they have an absolute forest fire at a position and they have a desperate need at a position, and they're more likely to go out into free agency and to buy one. So a little surprised, but not shocked, because that's Belichick's MO. I will say one other thing about Jaycee Jackson. To me, I think there can't be a more untagged, attractive player in this year's free agency. He's got more interceptions than anybody in football over the last 4 years, 25. He's got 17 in the last 2 years. He's played in a very complicated system and played very well. And he's 26 years old. And to me, I think Jaycee Jackson is probably going to make a lot of money. My feeling, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, that I think he's one of those guys that would fit in very, very well with a team that has a lot of money and is in a division with great quarterbacking. And so, I mean, again, it's obvious that, but I think the Chargers are going to be in play for him. And I would not be surprised if the Raiders, Dave Ziegler knows them better than anybody out, non-New England entity right now. He and Josh McDaniels, I'm sure they're going to, inquire about him as well.
You think about it, the Chargers got their answer to Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack, although, again, Mack is no longer in Donald's category, but they get their answer to Jalen Ramsey and Jaycee Jackson if they make that move. And,
yes,
Peter, I thought when the Patriots move on from Stephon Gilmore, that just meant it was inevitable they'd work out a deal and keep Jaycee Jackson. I am surprised. And to the extent that you want to just shrug and say, well, you let a big-name free agent go, you get a third-round compensatory pick. Folks, last year, the Patriots went on a free agent spending spree. They're not getting anything for Joe Thuney leaving last year. It's when you have net losses where you start getting those picks. They had net gains last year. They're not getting any compensation for losing Joe Thuney to free agency a year ago. And depending upon what they do in free agency this year, they won't be surely as aggressive as they were last year. But depending upon what they do by signing guys in, they may not get much for Jaycee Jackson. It all hinges on what the Patriots do. Look, Jackson's younger. Jackson's on the market for the first time. But so is Von Miller. Von Miller's never been a free agent. Who do you think is more likely to spark a bidding war? It could be two different magnitudes, but it could still be more competition for Von Miller Now that you got the Broncos maybe back in the mix, the Rams want to keep him. Somebody else may swoop in. Even though I think Jaycee Jackson just makes a beeline to one team for a huge amount of money. Miller may be the subject of a tug-of-war for a little while for several different teams, given the championship pedigree and the talent that he still has.
Here's the way I look at Von Miller right now. Okay, so he turns 33 in a couple of weeks, and he's one of these guys who, over the last 2 years, he's been good, but he hasn't been great. And you have to ask yourself, does he have, if we're going to pay him real money, does he have some significant greatness left in him? Look, if I were Von Miller, and I have no idea what's most important to Von Miller. One more good signing bonus, one more payday, or the opportunity that would be best anywhere, especially I'm assuming Aaron Donald is coming back. Now that is an open question, Mike, but I do think that signs point to Aaron Donald coming back. So if you can play with Aaron Donald and you forget the rest of that interior line, especially Greg Gaines, Sebastian Joseph Day, is an absolute load. You're going to be better playing for the Rams, assuming that those guys are back. You're going to be better playing for the Rams than you would be even like you go to Denver. And who knows? Maybe he's jonesing to go back to Denver. His Twitter account would certainly say that he is. But if you're George Paton, you've proven you're not going to be romanced by the past. You have to look at Von Miller and say, 33-year-old pass rusher. What's he got left? And you know what? If you were George Paton, you know what you do? You have your pro personnel people say, we're taking emotion out of this. I want to know. We're going to have a meeting around the room this weekend, and I want everybody's best opinion and best argument. Chandler Jones or Von Miller. If we believe that we need a bookend for Bradley Chubb, that we need somebody to help Chubb rush the passer because on his own, he's not going to be great. But with help, he could be great. He could be Leonard Marshall to, the opposite of Lawrence Taylor. So that would be my biggest question, Mike. I mean, my gut feeling right now is that that's a close call. But I would be inclined to say, man, if I think Chandler Jones could stay healthy, that's a guy I'd really, really like to get in my locker room.
And from Von Miller's perspective, you have to ask yourself, what's the motivation? Is it to maximize dollars or maximize your chances to win a Super Bowl? And when I first saw that he was making some noise about going back to Denver, that was before we knew what Aaron Rodgers was doing, and it may have been in anticipation of the possibility that Aaron Rodgers chose the Broncos. Maybe Von Miller is less inclined now that it's Russell Wilson instead of Aaron Rodgers. I know the Broncos are working very hard to create the impression that Russell Wilson was plan A. Sorry, I'm not buying it. You can try all you want. I'm not buying it. Aaron Rodgers was plan A. Russell Wilson quickly became plan B when Rodgers stayed in Green Bay. I say all that, Peter, because what if Von Miller just decides, engage in the same analysis Aaron Rodgers should have and maybe did engage in, take a step back, look at all the team, look at all the destinations, look at all the places you can go, and where's the place where you're most likely to compete for a championship? Maybe he contacts the Packers and says, kind of like to play in Green Bay. Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith are in danger of being released. Miller does a cap-friendly deal, and all of a sudden he is paired up with Aaron Rodgers, just not in Denver, in Green Bay.
So many things are possible. So many things. And that's why, at the start of the show, Mike, when we talked about this, one of the reasons why, it's been a really, really active week in terms of trades and signings and all that is because teams are getting tight caps sort of figured out and kind of put in a row. And there are a lot of teams like Green Bay that are going to release players simply because they can't afford them. You know, no matter what you do with Aaron Rodgers' contract this year, okay, it's still going to cost something, and as is Devontae Adams. And plus, the one thing that Brian Gutekunst knows that he shouldn't do, okay, he shouldn't just say, oh, I'll just put everything out in the future. Then your 2024 cap, even if the cap is 250, 260 million, you're going to have a $70 million anchor on that cap with these gigantic contracts. Now, obviously, you can keep pushing it into the future and all that. I get it. I know how the cap works. However, I think that you're still going to see over the next 3 or 4 days very good players. You brought up a great name with the prospect of Zadarius Smith possibly, going free. There are going to be so many good players that the market that you just put up, the graphic that you just put up of the top free agents, I believe there could be 5 different names in the top 10 on Tuesday than there are right now.
Yeah, I agree with you because we're just getting started with the guys who are going to become available, whether it's because they get cut before Wednesday, they get cut on Wednesday, or whatever the case may be. Something about the salary cap, because there are some teams that are in cap problems. And one of the reasons they're in cap problems is because last year the cap dropped. There was kicking of cap dollars into this year, and even with a $25 million bump, there are some teams that really have some work to do. But one of the realities is, and this is why we're seeing the Chargers with so much cap space, and there are other teams with a ton of cap space, the $25 million increase this year and the promise that there will be more like it coming. We're getting past the pandemic losses. They were spread out over multiple years, not all taken in one year. The TV money is going through the roof. The gambling money is growing and growing and growing, and the cap is going to keep going up and up and up. So, when you look at these deals that will be done over the course of the next week, it's not just cap number this year, it's cap space next year, cap space the year after. You're in a position to pay guys a lot of money this year at a relatively small cap number, knowing that when the bigger cap numbers hit in 23, 24, and 25, the ceiling is going to be a lot higher, and it's going to be easier to absorb those contracts. So the point is, there's going to be a lot of spending. There's going to be a lot of spending, especially after the Rams showing the value of the all-in Teddy KGB maneuvers. We've seen the Chargers already. We've talked about that. I think we're going to see more teams get aggressive, and that's good for the players because that's more money going into the pockets of the players right now.
Mike, at the Combine, one of the people who I met with was a club executive who is very heavily involved in the cap. And I asked him I just said, if you're Brian Gutekunst right now and you got to sign Aaron Rodgers, tell me what you would do. I said, assuming that Rodgers wants to go back to Green Bay, and now obviously he has. I said, how would you do it? And he said, what I would do is I would say I would really ask Aaron, even though he may not have the answer for it, seriously, I want you to tell me how many years you really think you're going to play. Okay, and let's say at some point the Packers did this, and Aaron Rodgers said 3, but maybe only 2. And again, I have no idea what went on, but this is what this guy said. And he said then if he said he was going to play 3 years, then here's how we would do it. And he just said, let's say the magic number is $50 million, that he's going to want to make. Well, then you sign him basically to a 5-year contract for pick a number, okay? Let's say $250 million. But that years 4 and 5, year 5 definitely is going to go away. Year 4 probably is going to go away. And you build in money that is going to not hit the cap until 25 and 26. Let's say if it's a 5-year contract. So the bottom line in the whole thing is, let's say the cap in 26 should be about $300 million. And if you were willing mentally to say, instead of $300 million to get Aaron Rodgers to play the next 3 years, we are willing to have $30 million dead cap money, 10% of our cap disappear in that 5th year because we are designing and planning in to put $30 million in dead money on Aaron Rodgers in that last year. Are we willing, if the cap is going to be, let's say, $300 million, are we willing to basically have a cap that would be $270 million? Mentally, can we do that? And if you can, then that's how you do a contract like that. And that's why, to me, when so many teams are snug against the cap, you're going to have teams that really backload and mentally will have a phony year or two at the end of these contracts.
You've touched on an important dynamic, especially as it relates to franchise quarterbacks. At the time that the relationship ends, there is going to be a cap reckoning. The question is, how big will it be? And if there are multiple years left on that contract and the player retires. We saw what happened with Drew Brees last year. He waited until after June 1. More specifically, the team waited to move him to the reserve retired list until after June 1. That's what the Buccaneers are doing with Tom Brady. They're not going to put him on reserve retired until after June 1. If they do it now, it's $32 million. If they do it later, it's $8 million this year and $24 million next year. The dynamic you have just identified, a $24 million cap hit in 2023 for the privilege of having Tom Brady for 2 years. That's what teams are going to be doing more and more.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.